Good morning, everybody. This is January 19th, and it's 11 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the first order of business is to approve the minutes from the previous session provided by Secretary Lefferman. And may I have a motion to approve them, please?
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good. These are the minutes from the July 6, 2023 meeting. Second order is there's a definitive subdivision plan for 35, I believe it's 37 Interlake, and that may be an error, to be reviewed today. Presentation by the applicant and a board discussion and approval. And since I'm in a butter, I'm going to recuse myself from that discussion. And I asked Dr. Ladici if he would chair temporarily, okay?
Okay,
So
I'll do so. Thank you.
So I'll sit in the audience.
So if I could give a quick overview, and this is Robert Fournier from SK Design. Thanks, Bob, for coming.
My pleasure.
Jim Welsh, Tri-Town Health. So this is on the agenda for the Board of Health to review and possibly approve what we call a definitive subdivision plan. There are two types of subdivisions. Usually there's a preliminary subdivision, which boards don't act on. We sort of review them and kind of pay attention to what's going on. And a definitive subdivision plan requires by bylaw for the Board of Health to act or not act on the submission within 45 days. Now, typically our role in jurisdiction with respect to the definitive subdivision not only requires us to review within 45 days of submission. If we don't act, it's an automatic presumptive approval. Mm-hmm. Most definitive subdivision plans that we are involved with has some sort of jurisdiction with Title V, septic, and possible water supplies, private wells versus public water supply wells. We have jurisdiction and oversight when it comes to those kind of areas of definitive subdivisions. And we'll give Bob the floor to give an overview for the board on what they're trying to accomplish here. But if I'm not mistaken, this plan involves town sewer and town water, which has nothing to do with the Board of Health per se. Mm-hmm. We do have some type of role and responsibility if there's some type of demolition of the building at some point, but it's really a departmental thing, not so much a Board of Health thing. We require like baiting of pest control, asbestos abatement, which we handle that through the department. So there's not a lot for the Board of Health to have jurisdiction with. So we should give Bob the floor, let him provide an overview. Then the board has really two choices. You can approve the definitive subdivision or take no action on the definitive subdivision and let the process play out. So before we get to that point, Bob, if you want to give the board just a little bit of an overview on the location, what the plan is, and
sure,
kind of go from there.
Fournier, Fournier. And I'm with the engineers that put this plan together. We've been actually working on doing engineering at this property since the early 80s when the Sisto School owned it, and they ran a sewer line up from wherever it was, quite a ways through all those rocks. So this property is currently served by a 8-inch sewer, gravity sewer line that runs down.
Yeah, there's sewer line, yeah.
Yeah, and the current applicant who purchased this land, I believe at auction a number of years ago, is really trying to avoid the town to rezone the property so that he can't do what he wants. That's basically what this plan is about.
About say it one more time.
This, by filing this subdivision plan,
Yeah.
it locks in the current zoning.
Okay.
Which is, it's a R2 zone for the front of it, and it's an R4 zone for the back. I don't know that the town has filed any plans to change the zoning, but in the event they desire to or intend to, this subdivision plan will lock in the current zoning for 8 years.
Is this who the mansion is?
Yes, yeah, the mansion's right here.
Okay. And refresh my memory again, R2, R4?
Geez, I don't remember off the top of my head
But they wanna
it's a
lock it
density
in.
thing. It's the amount of frontage and area
It's like
required.
320 feet of frontage on an R2.
Yeah, it's probably 20,000 square feet lot size versus 40,000 square feet. Don't know the figures exactly. But that's really the intent of this subdivision process. We don't intend to build a road, but this would provide plans to do so and that wants to do that. So we're gonna take this original 300 something odd acres, which is this big piece, goes way up here, up to the top of the mountain. 294 acres. Yes. Yeah, this plan subdivides it from 1 lot to 3 lots, basically. So we're gonna have a new lot here, a new lot here, and this would be the remaining land. And these lots would all have frontage on this new street, which would be built as part of this subdivision process. So that's what a subdivision really is. It's creating a new street whereby you have new frontage to be able to create new lots.
And Bob, so this locks you in for 8 years.
Right.
This definitive has other boards reviewed and opined on this yet? Like planning and other?
On this subdivision?
Yeah.
Well, we did file a preliminary subdivision plan back over the summer, or actually it was last spring, I think. I didn't go to those meetings, to be honest with you. I don't know what became of them.
Right.
But this is the next legal step, is to
Yeah.
file the
So
definitive.
assuming it works its way through the 45 day, and I know the Board of Health has 45 days, and I don't know
Right.
what other boards have. Maybe it's the same
Yeah,
5 days.
right.
And it's 3 parcels. And you're saying that this would lock in any zoning change in perpetuity for 8 years,
Well,
for at least 8 years.
in perpetuity in 8 years.
Yeah, so,
Right.
I mean, for the next, not in perpetuity, in the next 8 years.
After 8 years,
And it's zoned for, so I guess my question is like, I don't know. This is more zoning stuff, has nothing to do with me. I'm just trying to visualize, like, are these like residential parcels? Are they industrial?
Oh, this is a
Potential and,
a residential zone. So the only thing by right use here are going to be houses.
just houses.
Family.
Does this include like potential like 30 affordable housing units on one parcel? Does zoning allow for that? Or is it just like residential, like one parcel kind of house kind of situation? I'm just trying to envision what is allowable within that 8-year span. Zoning changes.
I'd be curious about afterwards too.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to speak, yeah. Obviously, I'm not up to date on this. And I'm looking at this, you're saying that in fact, we have very little impact on this. And if we don't do anything, in fact, in 45 days, it goes through. But I am curious about hearings, like you're putting a new road in to 183, that affects the people there. You're putting in 3 subdivisions that will affect people who about 8 years of significance, but after 8 years, are you free to do what you wish? And so those neighbors who agree now may be faced with having to have 30 or 40 new neighbors or more? I mean, is there any limit on what you could do in terms of, all right, there's the sewer, but how much can that sewer accommodate? So
We
what's
can.
the limiting factor here?
Right now, we can do what's permitted by the zoning bylaw in this zone, which are houses. If we wanted to come in and do a 50-unit hotel or something, we would need special permits.
I see.
From select board, probably planning board.
So there's a mechanism for that approval outside of what's,
Yes, yeah. So say this gets approved next month by the planning board. We are concurrently working on plans to do other types of development here
On this.
on this property. And we will be performing like preliminary hearings with the select board or whatever the approving authority is for that development. I don't know if it's select board or zoning board. one of those. Or probably planning board too, so.
John, question for you, because I know you're on sewer. I know you're on the Board of Health hat today, but does sewer and water opine on even like with these regular 3 parcels on capacity?
They will. I mean, we have discussed this, and I know the system has been hooked up there for quite a while. This is going to probably change, especially if this becomes a multi-level unit. You're going to have more usage, both of the water and the sewer, and then capacity comes into effect.
Sure.
And that has to be brought to the water sewer department.
Yeah, in fact, I personally had discussions with the sewer department a couple of years ago when we had a different plan on the boards, and we wanted to make sure that there was requisite capacity at the treatment plant to treat it, and there was at the time.
And there was at the time.
At the time, yes.
Yeah.
I know things change. and stuff,
Yeah,
so-
things change, and, we're expanding in some ways and contracting in other ways, so it would be good for the water sewer to decide what they're gonna wanna do. What's our responsibility as the Board of Health regarding this?
So
There's very little we can add.
there's very little, because when we look at definitive subdivisions, what I look at in my review and then the board approves is like associations, legal documents, is it a shared septic system? Does it trigger a public water supply, which means like a drilled well that multiple people use, and there's all this other regulatory things. This is absent from any of that.
Right.
And so like, we don't have much of a standing to reject or deny or ask. We can table and ask for more information, but I don't know where you would get, there's no more information right now.
Right.
Those two things are sort of, this is really like a formality. I want to put this in front of the board within the 45 days to allow the opportunity to speak about this publicly and by board, rather than ignore it and it's a presumptive approval. Then the board says, well, how can I review this?
Right.
So it's sort of like a formality today.
So our presumptive approval is based on the fact that there are other committees that are gonna, get involved, and you're gonna have to speak with them.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the planning board has the final say, regardless of what you folks recommend to them or not.
Yeah.
They can fly in the face of opposition, or they can make a conditional approval that the Board of Health be contacted before building permits are issued, for instance. So there's a lot of things that they can do. There's a lot of leeway.
Is there going to be retention ponds for runoff on this project or something?
There would be one, yes, we have one identified.
My only comment, it's not so much of a jurisdictional thing, is like just, vector control for mosquitoes and standing water and things like that. It has to be, want to be monitored over a period of time, because, you have retention ponds that with standing water creates harborage and growth of mosquitoes.
And what is this, Bob? What is?
It's a basin that would, it's an open basin that would capture the stormwater runoff from the roadway. What it does is it slows it down.
So it's the roadway that requires the runoff.
It's an above-ground cistern.
Yeah, well, this is an open one.
Right. It's an above-ground, that's right.
Yeah, and it has an outlet pipe, so it's only gonna have water in it during a rain event.
Yeah.
Then it drains out usually within 48 hours. It's completely empty.
And it's on town water, right? It's on town water?
It is on town water, yeah.
But this is rainwater accumulation.
Yeah.
Off the street.
Right.
Accumulates and then drains off within 48 hours.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's standard. You see those all over the place now.
Yeah, right.
Can't get away without doing them pretty much anywhere.
Got it.
So, we're sorry to waste your time on this.
No.
We have to do a similar thing with Public Works Department, and we
Yeah.
have to go to the Fire Department.
More of a waste of your time, given that our lack of action gives approval. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's part of the process.
There'll be a lot of people speaking up about this.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, and again, my perspective as your agent is to put this in front of you, even though there's, let's say, to give the board an opportunity to speak about it publicly.
So we'll
Because it'll
get
be
to vote
multiple-
on it afterwards and decide whether we.
So you guys can make a motion in a second
Yeah.
to either take no action, which means like you don't have anything negative to say, or you can make a motion, say you approve as submitted, the definitive subdivision with respect to the Board of Health Authority.
And the other authorities. I mean, I'd say that we approve, given the review by the other authorities that are direct responsibility for this.
So whatever you want to decide.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank
I wasn't sure anyone was coming. No one got back to me on emails.
No, I didn't hear see an email. Not recent, was it?
You want to make a motion?
The motion could be that I would give tentative approval, given the,
With the understanding that
that there are other
other committees that
other
are going
committees are
to.
responsible for the overall oversight of the
Okay.
progress of the committee,
All right.
of this project.
Any any other thoughts about that before we second the motion? All right, second the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Kenny, you want to return to your chairmanship?
Thanks, Joe. Okay. All right, so next order of business is updates on the Housatonic Waterworks situation. Elias, you want to give us something about that?
I don't have much more than what you have. And the reality is, we all know that we're waiting for the utility commission to decide this 112% increase. That was in the hearings that we've been at. I had not heard. What I did hear recently is that Great Barrington was looking at taking it over. They're making a bid for it. They bid $2.3 million to take over Housatonic Waterworks. And then they have to decide whether they do want to do it and apply it to the folks who are on that line. I don't know if anybody's heard more about that offer, and it's going to be expensive, but I haven't heard more. The issue of the water quality, as you all know, for the last many years, they use an average, and so they've been within the average, but on any given month, they might be well over it. They all agree that the particulates could be cancerous at certain levels, but they're not. While the water may be dirty because of the manganese and the difficulty in taking these metals out of the water, they are not life-threatening. So the people there, including the 23 families, I know the minutes said 18, but in fact, there are 23 Stockbridge families, 66 West Stockbridge and 750 Housatonic families on it. And so I don't know more than that, the offer by the consideration by Great Barrington, and I have not heard about the utility company coming in and approving that 112% increase, which is significant. It would take people from approximately $746 a year to $1,641. It's quite a significant increase without any improvement, but they're saying they need that extra money, about $800,000, to make the improvements that have been recommended. But as you well know, they've been recommended for many years with only moderate success, if any. A great cost to homeowners to put in private systems, which again are only moderately at best effective with clearing up of the manganese in the water, which they say is a result of chlorinating a public water system, and the manganese is a natural byproduct of the chlorination. So that's all I know at this point.
Well, thank you for staying with that, Elias. I have I don't know if it's a concern or a question, and I'm wondering if you might help us out to find this out in the future. My understanding of the Housatonic Waterworks service to the 23 families in Stockbridge is that at some point, maybe in the 70s, I don't know exactly when, the EPA informed the people in the Furnace District, where most of these people are, that their water was contaminated with PCBs from the Housatonic contamination as a result of what GE had done, and that they recommended that they not use their well water anymore and get on a public water supply. At that point, as I understand it, Housatonic Waterworks either reached out or was asked to help the situation and did extend their service from Housatonic to the 23 families in Stockbridge with a kind of corresponding contribution by the town of Stockbridge that the Sewer and Water Commission would be responsible for maintaining or even installing those pipes as need be to keep that service going.
Housatonic Waterworks said that that's what Stockbridge offered.
I'm sorry?
Housatonic Waterworks said that Stockbridge offered to maintain those pipes?
Yes, that's what I understand. In fact, I believe that since then, Stockbridge has been doing that.
We have.
Right. And so the idea the question I have, or the concern is that regardless of the consequences of what's going on, in other words, regardless of whether Great Barrington takes over the Housatonic Waterworks, especially if Great Barrington takes it over, but if there's some sort of significant redoing of Housatonic Waterworks, is there a possibility or a danger or whatever that the Housatonic Waterworks will no longer provide service to the people in Stockbridge? And if so, we should know, but that could become a Board of Health concern, because if they are still precluded from using wells, if that's in fact the case, then, they're going to be in a situation that's going to maybe require community well uphill or sewer and water to come in and provide service. So that would be an important issue potentially. I don't have any reason to believe that the service is going to be discontinued, but I'm just wondering if there's a significant change like Great Barrington taking it over, if that could be a possibility.
John, you're on sewer and water. Has there ever been discussion about?
There has been discussion about it, and our position, Mike Buffoni's position is until they decide, we're not going to act on it. In other words, if we'll continue our maintenance, which is what we agreed to. If they ever want to, it's not something we're offering, but if they come to us and ask that they be, put on the same lines that we are providing for the rest of Stockbridge, that can be arranged.
Okay. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to find that out if that, or keep being aware of that so we could get some heads up.
Yeah, I remember early on when we had meetings regarding the water turbidity, there were many members of that Furnace area district, and they all wanted an answer and they all wanted a solution. And they were asking basically if they can hook up to the, to the Stockbridge water.
Could they do that? I mean, outside of what's happening and all.
It would require,
Could they?
it would require a certain outlay of money, and, you'd have to do something that'll cost money on our part.
So Stockbridge is holding off.
Stockbridge is holding off until they know a little bit more. These people are going to have to come up with some some solution too. I mean, they're going to be charged either by going to Great Barrington with that 112% increase, or at that point, it may be a break-even situation. They may say, hey, we might as well join Stockbridge. So we're not proposing anything. I don't think the water department is proposing anything, but we'll wait and see what happens with the Great Barrington takeover.
Well, another issue would be potentially to ask the EPA if their plan to remediate the river.
DEP, it would be DEP. It would be
It would be DEP at this point? All right, sorry. Yeah, you're right.
DEP.
DEP.
Not EPA.
Not EPA, DEP.
What's the difference?
So
Although,
EPA is a federal agency, DEP is the Department of Environmental Protection that oversees the water supply.
However, there is this overlap. There is this overlap that EPA has sort of taken over control if what's going on is in the floodplain.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just for the cleanup or, anyway, what we have to ask one or the other of them, maybe both, if potentially the remediation is going to improve the situation so they could go back to using their old wells with some sort of remediation situation. I don't know.
Given their timeline, that'd probably be about 10 years from now.
I wonder if there was this letter that people could file to the EPA for problems there was a discussion. It wasn't clear to me exactly what this letter was about, but I got the feeling that it had something to do with if you suspected your property might be contaminated by PCBs, that you could get a letter from the EPA to allow some future assistance or something to occur, but you had to file this letter. I wonder if that would be related potentially to people trying to, do remediation around their wells or in such a way that they could get their wells into better condition.
I know very little about that. I have some updates, not really updates, but just when the board's done, I'll wrap up with my thoughts when you guys are done talking.
Anyway, so that's another issue is potentially they could remediate their own wells, with the assistance of somebody.
No, get off the town water,
Exactly.
go back.
And rather than having sewer and water extend the lines that cost, like you're saying, especially if you didn't have a consensus with all 23 families wanting to do this, it might not be cost effective at all for sewer and water to extend the lines. But if they could remediate their wells, that might be a better way to do it. Jim, do you want to jump in there?
Okay, so not really updates, to cap off on what Elias reported out on. So I did attend a joint meeting in Great Barrington a couple months ago. It was a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and a joint meeting with the Board of Health. Colleagues of ours, Mike Hugo and Cheryl Sabar, who are attorneys with Massachusetts Association of Health Boards. They're an advocacy and supportive group that supports boards of health on education. They offer guidance and ideas, but they don't give legal advice specifically. So they came out, which I played a role in, and reaching out to them and with respect to Housatonic Waterworks, as well as the collaborative stuff that we work on. And they came out and gave a full presentation on jurisdictional authority of boards of health. It was well attended. Many people from the public were there. It was recorded on CTSB. While they didn't get into the Housatonic Waterworks issue at that meeting, that their intent wasn't that, it was more of an educational thing. It was brought up, and I can forward you the slides of that meeting. I have them electronically. It was brought up that boards of health do have some jurisdictional authority when it comes to public nuisances, water supply, and things like that. And so subsequently after that, I know I spoke to the town manager at a meeting with Mike Hugo about what possibilities that possibly the Great Barrington Board of Health and others could look into. And we don't really have jurisdiction in Great Barrington, so we have residents that are served by the water supply. We already looked into this with this board previously with town council. We don't really have authority when it's physically located in another municipality. While we still have 23 families that are affected, and we have concerns about that, so we're monitoring that. And so I know there's other conversations that I read that Great Barrington could possibly be looking into purchasing, but that's a ways out. You got to get an engineering firm, study, cost benefit analysis. So meanwhile, while all these irons are in the fire, and I don't want to mince words here, and these are my words, it's not a reflection of this board, but as your director and agent, I think it's completely ridiculous and unacceptable that we have residents, regardless of town, West Stockbridge, Housatonic, Great Barrington, Stockbridge, for 2+ years, having a water supply of this magnitude, while people say, and DP may claim that it's potable, but the HAA5 consumption long-term is a health issue, possible carcinogen, and creates cancer. I think, these are environmental justice communities, people of middle and low income that are being subjected that this is their water supply. And I encourage anyone here watching media, go look at some of the pictures that these residents have submitted.
Yeah.
It's flat out embarrassing. I think government and all levels have failed these residents miserably, and it's totally unacceptable. And that's my opinion. And while I think it's fantastic that a municipality is looking into purchasing, that's not the problem solver. I mean, you may purchase this water supply, you're still, now the taxpayers are going to be dealing with a massive capital with significant investment that still needs to be had. And I would like to see our delegation involved and pin DEP down and say, I want something in writing right now if this water's potable, because it may be potable and it may be aesthetically unpleasing, but this HAA5 is our carcinogen. And you can't have you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have a potable water supply by definition, but something in that water supply creates cancer. You can't have it both ways. And I find it completely embarrassing and unacceptable that any resident in this day and age is subject to this kind of bullshit.
Part of the issue, if I may, on that, is that the government has said it meets the standard. That when they have a standard set at 60 parts per billion, and they come in at, say, 55, they're within their rights. So maybe the parts per billion needs to change to put legal pressure on the company, because we have people who are getting water that they've acknowledged. In certain months, it goes beyond that. Certain months, it doesn't. But on the average, it's below what the government says is problematic. Change that limit. And then there'd have to be some action taken. Because I don't see from anything happening where they're saying, okay, you're acting outside limits of health. They're saying, well, we do the test and we're within the limits. It may not look good, it may not taste good, but we haven't violated any of the laws and regulations. And so until they do, I don't see what the action is other than people being upset. They should not have to drink. The water looks terrible. Bathing children in that water that's dirty. Then you might say, oh, it's only because of discoloration from the manganese and the acid that's formed. I'm sorry, to put your child into that water? No, but legally, they're still within bounds. So I don't know what the answer is to that.
Yeah, and I mean, my only comment I'll make, and it's more of a scenario situation. All I'm saying is if there was a water supply in our jurisdiction, the Tri-Town area, I would have asked my boards of health or Tri-Town or whoever board, I would issue a mandatory public health order for independent testing. A third party to go out and test these locations randomly to get a better understanding in real time what these numbers are looking at. There's nothing we can say or do about that, but other than provide updates. Hopefully there's some relief for these residents. But with respect to our residents, we're talking about there's no price tag on public health and wellness of our residents. There's no price tag. But you're talking about a significant capital investment trying to feed into, and I don't know where the closest water supply line for those residents are at Stockbridge. I would assume it's pretty far away.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Well, I'd like to say something about this. First of all, when this issue first came up, we had a Board of Health meeting. And in preparation for that Board of Health meeting, I spoke to Mike Canales and actually went and solicited complaints from Stockbridge residents in the Furnace District. And I had a couple of people who potentially, and had some people go out and actually contact those people. Now, then we had a Board of Health meeting. Now, according to Mike, there had been no complaint. And as far as I know, our Board of Health has never received a complaint from the people on the water supply in the Furnace District, in spite of soliciting complaints. So my intention at that point, then we had a public meeting, and we had one person from the Furnace District here who complained that his dog didn't like the water, as far as I remember, but the other complaints only came from out of town. I don't remember having any specific other Stockbridge resident on the record complaining about the water except about the dog.
Is it back then or to date?
No, this is back at our meeting.
About
Okay, now,
a year ago.
all right, so now I understand Jim's comments, and I totally agree with the tenor of his remarks and what he's saying about it. But I also, agree with Elias's perception, because I also spoke to the DEP, to the Western District people, two different people from DEP out of Springfield. I think they're out of Springfield. And they asserted that there was no specific identifiable violation of standards of quality that they could put their finger on, that we could say anything about. Now, of course, there's a lot of water under the bridge, so to speak, since then. And I'm just wondering now, in view of what Jim is saying, which I totally agree with, what he's concerned about. Elias, do you feel that that situation has changed enough so that our board should revisit the idea in some way related to this? Do you think we should write a letter to the DEP asking them specifically, do they have a concern about the quality of the water, a specific violation in particular, or something else, or even stronger, as Jim said, is the water, it's safe to drink? I mean, in that.
Well, I would like clarity around the HAA5 concept, because like in one hand, it may meet minimum standards, but then on the other hand, when you dive into the HA whatever you call it, AA5, it said that long-term use is a health concern.
Right.
Okay, so Elias, and then in addition to that, do you think it's time for us to approach the people who are on the water supply and considering what you know about it, solicit or reassess what we feel, what they see their situation as being? Because as far as I can tell, I mean, my initial effort at this, and it might have been before you were on the board, was to try to solicit, their opinions and do something if they had complaints, and we didn't get any. We didn't get any at that point.
That was last year.
This is that very first meeting that we had about this. Remember that, Jim? We went, but I certainly times can change and everything like that. So do you have, the second question I have to you, besides whether you think we should draft a letter related to what Jim is saying, or is also, should we regroup and reapproach this at these people?
Can I say something? I like the idea of an independent evaluator, because we have numbers here that Elias has given us that show that they're under the danger level. So if we were to get that other level or independent evaluation, I think then we can act with some certainty that we are not, calling a fire when there isn't a fire. In other words, if there's an issue, then we have to have some information, some
Data.
yeah.
And again, we don't have jurisdiction to issue an order to Housatonic Water Works, but in my mind, if this board were to make a motion to authorize me to send some type of letter,
As a tri.
I would be Stockbridge.
Stockbridge,
right.
Lee and Lennox is not part of this.
Okay.
We would draft a letter and we would send that request to the town manager and Board of Health in Great Barrington, requesting that they seriously consider independent third-party testing of their water supply and to share those results with this board. That's about as far as, in my mind, you can probably go right now. It's an actionable request.
Yeah.
Well, I
We may
like
not-
John's approach to it too. Are you satisfied that that would be at least?
I think that would be a good start. And I would,
Which have the water tested.
yeah, in other words, as the Stockbridge, Board of Health, I think we're concerned over our 23 residents, the Stockbridge residents, and we would like to have their water tested by an independent evaluator. And, we would have to have their okay, of course, but, we can also act as a Board of Health, as an independent organization that needs to follow through. It is our jurisdiction to call in and I think we should send that letter to Great Barrington.
Yep.
Send that letter.
Send this letter to the board, to the select people in Great Barrington.
I mean, I go back to, we do an independent test, we find out that what the other testing proved. I don't want to give these families false hope that we're going to do this and have some action. Because the reality, if it comes in on an aggregate level, that it's within the federal levels.
Yeah, no,
Well, yeah, also, I agree with Elias, and I also agree with John's point about not calling fire. Okay, we don't want to create
Right.
the impression that there is a health hazard when there isn't. Right. So we don't want to do that either. So I think Jim's approach sounds good to me at this point. Can I have a motion to have Jim send a letter to, why don't you just send a letter requesting that.
yeah, and I'll be very careful in that response, saying that we're requesting that Great Barrington consider independent testing in an effort to review additional data sets to be reviewed by not only the public, but us.
Is that?
I mean, we're not saying there's a
Can I have a
public.
motion that Jim?
So
I would, the motion being that Jim will send a letter to Great Barrington,
Board of Selectmen and Board of Health
Board of Selectmen,
requesting
Board of Health.
third-party independent water testing.
Okay, you want to make that motion, Elias? And
Yeah.
I'll second it.
I'll make the motion, Jim.
Okay, so
We'll
read
send a letter to the,
for the record,
read the
please,
motion?
Elias.
I'm sorry.
Would you read the motion you're going to make for the record?
Yes, that Jim will send a letter to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health of the Tri-Town areas requesting that there be third-party independent testing of the water provided by the Housatonic Water Works to its various consumers.
And we just take out Tri-Town, just insert Stockbridge.
Stockbridge Board of Health.
Stockbridge, okay.
John, do you want to second that?
I second that.
Okay,
Roll call vote.
okay, and we'll have a vote. Okay,
Second, favor, aye.
Elias,
I approve.
Charles Kenny, yes.
Okay, good. That's a good actionable request. Doesn't mean we'll get it, but I think it supports our residents.
When you say you don't think you'll get it,
Well, I'm not saying we may not get it.
okay.
We're putting a request in,
Yeah,
not
we
a
won't
mandate.
anticipate what we got
Yeah.
until we
Yeah,
got
what
it.
does that exactly mean when we request, who are we requesting?
So we're going to request that Great Barrington,
Yeah,
that they require independent testing of the
I
water
would
supply.
add, can I amend the motion? I know I'm going to propose a new motion. I'm going to amend Elias's motion and say that we request on behalf of the citizens of the town of Stockbridge who are on the Housatonic Water Works service.
We'll send a letter on behalf of the residents.
Yeah, we'll say that in the motion too, that we're requesting on behalf of those citizens that and then everything else be the same. Does that sound like, does that make sense?
When you do the minutes, Elias, we can work together on that.
Okay.
In my mind, I kind of know what we need to do.
We'll send a letter on behalf of Stockbridge residents to the Stockbridge Board of Select,
To the Great Barrington
Great
Board of
Barrington.
Selectmen, Board of Health, that they seriously consider requiring independent testing of the water supply with the results being shared to this board.
Okay, and
can I ask a question
Yeah,
regarding,
sure.
and I like that,
right,
Justin, yeah. Why would they okay this unless we put some teeth in it? In other words, they may say, why should we spend the money? We're okay with it, we're gonna leave it alone.
Will Stockbridge pay for it?
I mean, who's gonna pay for it?
Well, I'll tell you, if this were, who would pay for it if this were in our town, it'd be the water supplier would pay for it. Not the taxpayers.
So it would be the Housatonic Water Works that would have
Yes.
to.
So again, I don't want to get muddy here, but like
Yeah.
our actionable request is to send them this letter asking them to seriously consider mandating third-party testing.
Shouldn't we be sending this letter to the Housatonic Water Works rather than?
We don't have jurisdiction over the water supply.
Okay.
Because it's physically located outside of our jurisdiction.
That's why we're asking Great
We're going
Barrington.
to send this to the Board of Health and Board of Selectmen because they have authority to issue public health orders in their town.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'll tell you what we're doing with this letter. Okay, we don't have authority in this jurisdiction. We can't, insist or anything like that at this point. But what we're doing by doing this is we're showing that we're aware that there's a potential problem, that we're concerned about the fact that we don't know clearly how severe the problem is, if there is one, and that we want to figure this out. And this is the beginning of it as our Board of Health responsibility. And I want, everybody should know that that's what we're doing. We can't really at this stage do something. Now, if this works out the way we're asking, then we're fine. Then we're going to find this out. If it doesn't, then we have to regroup and we'll look at what some of our other options are to figure this out a little bit better. But right now, I think this is the next step and it shows and accomplishes what we need to do, I think, at this point. So I'm going to ask to have my amended motion, somebody make a motion. I'm making
you
an
read
amended-
the amended motion?
Let me read the amended motion.
Yeah, I'm making this amended motion. Elias, would you please reread it with my amendment?
Yeah, the amended motion reads that Jim Willis will send a letter on behalf of Stockbridge residents to Great Barrington Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health that they seriously consider independent testing by a third party on the quality of the Houstonic water system as it exists today.
Yes, okay, good.
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Another roll call vote?
John Larry Dietrich. I agree.
Charles Kenny?
Approved.
Okay, so we have a unanimous one. Okay, Jim, thanks for that suggestion. Next order of business is Tri-Town updates. Jim, you want to give us some updates?
Yeah, don't have a lot of updates. We do have a Tri-Town meeting for the 25th of next week, 6 PM. The agenda's been posted, it's already been sent out. We did conclude with the budget. The next step for the Tri-Town budget is to deal with Finance Committee if they request our presence. We do have open housing issue at High Lawn Farm. There's a rental up there that we're dealing with. Doesn't require action by the board now. We're handling that. If it gets to a certain point, we'll deal with that. I will remind the board members that the state ethics training that is required for all municipal boards, whatever, has changed. There's a new platform where you used to just go online, do your training, print it, give it to the clerk. The state has changed that. Every person registered with the State Ethics Commission is going to get a separate email. They have to create your own account, and then when you log in, you'll see what's required each year. So pay attention to that. If you don't get an email over the next week or two, let Terry know to make sure, because all municipal employees, boards, commissions all have to do this ethics training. There is some in-person training that Massachusetts Association of Health Boards is putting on in person on March 30th at the Delaney House. It's on a Saturday, but the food is top notch. It's in Holyoke. And I know Elias has been chomping at the bit of trying to get some type of training and whatnot. If anyone is interested in going to that training, let me know. I'm probably going to go, even though I don't need to go. I'm probably going for the food. So if people want to ride with me, I'd be willing to drive you to and from. It's an excellent training. Really puts in perspective.
How long does it last?
It's all day. It's a day thing. So, but they make it easier with good breakfast and lunch. So once I get the confirmation of the actual registration,
It's March. You have a
March 30th.
30th.
We will cover costs on behalf of the boards. It's in our collaborative budget. I'll let you know about that. And I think that's it for updates.
Okay, I'd like to ask about an update on the COVID situation.
Sure.
Okay, do you want to give us any reports about I have some updates on it too that would be related to it if you want to start.
Yeah, and I did, and I know, Charlie, you sent me an email from Letter, which I didn't see all of it, but, I did get the wastewater treatment plant numbers from Director Andy Camby from Pittsfield, because Pittsfield actually still samples their wastewater for COVID. And the spike was sort of high end of December, January. Not as high as we were last year, but it's just under. So it's a good indicator, and I think Letter did say it's starting to come down a little bit. The CDC recommendations are still the same. Day 0 is the day you test, 5 days isolation, day 6 asymptomatic, day 6 through 10 with a mask. Promoting vaccinations. We know that the health system has reinstituted mandatory masking. No other boards of health that I know actually implemented a community rule, but it's really just universal precautions, testing. Tri-Town does have test kits. We do hand them out to people. We've done tons of clinics already. We're still pushing the vaccines. And yes.
Are the vaccines being taken? Because you hear all these things about many people are just bothering. Do we have?
Well, and we administered over 500. Have CHP still doing it. We may be getting more vaccines, but we have to privately purchase those vaccines, which are very expensive. We dropped $70,000 for 500 doses, which went like that before the holidays. And so unlike flu, which we try to do it on a seasonal basis for flu, September through December, COVID's going to be an ongoing thing. And so we're looking at possibly purchasing more COVID vaccines, but I think the demand's still there.
Okay, so I spoke with Jim Lederer too, who's the head of infectious disease at BMC, and the hospitalizations did go up a little bit. A few people had been hospitalized who had been vaccinated, but none recently. Their vaccination had been quite a bit before, and now it's dropping off again. There were no serious illnesses. And I think that's an important thing for the public to understand and distinguish. The current COVID strain, and ever since the disease sort of changed because we had herd immunity and vaccination immunity in place, the disease is still highly contagious, but contagious means that it spreads fast. It is not serious like the original disease for people who have been adequately vaccinated or who are immune because they had it already, from having had it. The disease now is like the cold. It's not that serious a disease for vaccinated people. So all I can say is that I would recommend that people regularly get vaccinated as the COVID vaccines become updated and available, because that handles the latest variants, and that they follow the DPH recommendations to mask and to isolate if you have, and test yourself, but that they shouldn't be unduly afraid that they're going to die from it, like the original disease, which was a very serious disease. And so we've moved on now, but we do need to be aware that this is still a very serious disease for people who haven't been vaccinated or couldn't be vaccinated for one reason or the other, and that I also think it's important to keep in mind that the influenza virus is another serious disease that vaccines are available for, and that vaccines are becoming available now for RSV, which is another serious disease. And also people should consider getting vaccinated for that. But with that in mind, I think that we're in a good situation as a result of what happened during the epidemic, et cetera.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you, Jim, for the update.
Yeah, my last update is,
sorry.
Charlie and I did share with everybody potential draft letter for public comments to be submitted for the EPA.
Thanks, Jim.
Transportation disposal plan.
Okay, so has everybody had a chance to read the Lennox letter? Jim, am I right that this is the Lennox letter? Lennox Board of Health already met and put this forward as a comment to the EPA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Has everybody had a chance to read that?
Yeah. So is this basically that same letter?
This is the same letter. Right.
So, yes, so it is the same letter except for a Stockbridge letterhead, but Dr. Kenny he put together a separate draft if you guys want to try to compare the two.
I have did everybody get a copy of mine?
Yes, so this one right here, it doesn't have a draft on it. is Charlie's version.
Yeah, no, this is the same letter as the Lennox letter, exactly the same as Jim's, but I added a paragraph, a penultimate paragraph. It's the next to last paragraph. Basically, what I added is, furthermore, and if you can understand, Jim and I met with Senator Mark a couple of months ago, along with Parker Rodriguez, who's the chief counsel of the Housatonic Railroad. And I had a very extended conversation with Parker Rodriguez about the use of the railroad potentially. And Parker tells me, first of all, that contrary to the misrepresentations that the General Electric Company made in their presentation before the Lee Select Board in, I think it was November, the Housatonic Railroad can construct new staging along the Housatonic Railroad, along the Housatonic River, in all of the places that are going to be needed for excavations and that are planned to have excavations for trucks. Without, you see, GE's gross misrepresentation was that the only railroad staging that could be used would be the staging that's already in place. And Housatonic Railroad does have staging near each of the impoundments by the mills. But Housatonic Railroad, Parker Rodriguez says that they can put it up anywhere that's needed, and they can do it within one construction year. In other words, they can have it done by the end of next year if they're asked to do that. And that means, according to him, they have the adequate railroad number of employees, and they also have the adequate number of trains to begin to transport the excavated material immediately next year when they're done with their staging. Now, the General Electric plan with the trucks specifically delays the excavations, specifically. I got this from the EPA, and I can send you a copy of the email if you want. They specifically delay the excavation of the PCBs in order to wait for the completion of the dump in Lee, the UDF in Lee, because the trucks cannot transport the excavated material to the dump until it's completed. Now, the railroad could begin to export the material out of county immediately. And the 2016 final permit, the 2020 final permit issued in December of 2020, both state that GE should maximize the exportation of the PCB waste out of county by rail to the extent possible. So this fits completely with that original plan, and GE pretended it didn't exist. It did not discuss this at all. So railroad can, first of all, begin the process within a year, and instead of waiting till 2026 for the completion of the dump. That's the first idea. Secondly, another time-saving aspect of using rail is that the rail can do this in all of the excavated areas simultaneously. This is exactly what the 2016 and the 2020 permits required GE to do, is to do this concurrently, do all the excavations concurrently to the extent feasible. Now, the problem with using trucks is that if you excavate all of the areas of the river at the same time, instead of having 13 years of one truck every 20 minutes all day long, you're going to have 5 years of one truck every 5 minutes, and they may not even have enough trucks to do that. So GE has concealed in its plan this hidden negative aspect of the trucks to delay the process of excavation of PCBs for 13 years so that the trucks can do this over a 13-year period, whereas rail could do this concurrently and probably get the job done. I bet that there's no specific year now because we haven't had a fair study done, but I bet it could be done in 5 years. I would bet, okay, just based on what I know about it. So the rail can speed up the entire process and by doing it concurrently, and it wouldn't have any additional effect like having all these trucks rumbling through the towns would. Now, I think it's horrible that GE concealed these two facts and that the EPA has allowed these facts, the concealment of these facts, to go by without making any statement and acting as though it's business as usual working with GE. GE cannot be trusted to do this. And EPA has stated very clearly that any delay in the excavation of this PCB waste from the river is a health hazard, a public health hazard for the towns along the river. So that this concealed set of circumstances by GE is a danger to our public health, and GE's plan is endangering our public health. And the EPA is letting this go by without making that specific, even though it's undeniable. So as a result of that, I've added a paragraph to this letter that the Lennox Select Board drafted, and I would hope you could consider putting this into our letter, comment to the EPA, in addition to what the Lennox Board had put in, which I think is excellent. I think the Lennox Board did an excellent job of putting forth key ideas about this. As you know, they recommended that the EPA look at Railroad 2 for the same reasons that I'm talking about. So my paragraph is, furthermore, it is clear that delay in implementing the remediation of PCB contamination in the Housatonic River endangers the public health and safety of our community. We urge the EPA to abandon GE's choice to use trucks because it is obvious that the use of railroad will not only enable the implementation to begin earlier than trucks, before the local disposal facility has been completed, but that use of railroad will also enable concurrent excavations, thereby speeding the entire implementation process without the burdens of increased simultaneous truck transport. So I would ask you to consider putting that into our letter.
Question.
Oh, hold it, Elias had his hand up.
Oh, sorry. My question is, where is the railroad going to be taking this PCB to?
Well, you know, the 2020 final permit encourages, actually tells GE to maximize the offsite, that is out of county, transfer of PCB waste by rail as much as possible, as much as feasible. That's the wording in it. And so there are facilities, there are two different levels of facilities. There are what are called TSCA approved, that's the Toxic Substances Control Act, which handles, Jim, you can correct me, I think it's a 50 milligrams per kilogram PCB amount or higher waste. And then there are non-TSCA approved facilities, again, that are out of county, that will handle less than the 50 milligrams per kilogram. And so this waste then could go to those places. Now, this is what the original 2016 set up to do. And this is what the statement in the 2020 permit implies should happen, is that rail should take everything at that point out of county. Now, once the dump is finished, then rail could take the local stuff, the stuff less than 50 milligrams per kilogram, to the local dump. But there's no reason for rail to wait for the local dump like there is for the trucks.
I just wonder if the reason why GE did not want to look at the rail is because it cost efficiency for them to put it off, number one. Number two is, I'm sure there's a cost involved in shipping it and getting someone to accept it, and rather than the dump that's going to be created in Lee.
Yeah, I don't know why GE doesn't want to do something that's in the public health's interest, but you know, that's quite a possibility, I think, at
You
cost.
say out of county, was that the site in Connecticut?
Pardon me?
Was that the site in Connecticut when you say out of county?
Not sure where the
I think,
locations
well,
are.
the locations that were previously looked at were in New York,
Okay.
I think there was one in Michigan, and then there are TISCA sites as far away as Texas that they looked at.
Well,
I
just
don't know
everything
where
was,
those
but
sites are.
essentially was out of county,
It would be out of county, yeah, but out of state.
Out of state.
of state.
Does this create another element that perhaps is going to create a delay, an unintended delay that we don't yet know where this TISCA site is?
I think they know where the sites are. I mean, I think the sites have already been identified, and I think it's, I mean, that was, there are a couple of different ideas here about delay. In the first place, the GE plan, as you're looking at it now, extends over 13 years. Okay, and it's because first of all, there's a 2 to 3 year delay waiting for the dump. Okay, if rail is used, the rail will start before that, or at the very latest, depending on how much they want to dilly-dally about this. If EPA says before the construction year starts this year, that rail should be used, that they actually step up and do something that's clearly in the public's interest, and forget about the cost to GE that you're bringing up, and whatever other interests there are that want to have the trucks doing this. If they say by, let's say, May or something like that, or whatever, that rail should do this, then rail will start doing this, and there won't be, even if there won't be any delay. Now, if EPA wants to drag this out and fight it, and there has to be some subsequent legal challenges to EPA's decision to use trucks instead of rail.
Why would the EPA fight it?
I have no idea. I think, well, you can look at it from the point of view that you just brought up, that GE may be influencing them to save cost. And, there's a huge potential for GE to want to do the cheapest thing and do trucks. And maybe there's some other factors that we don't know about that look at that way. But it's clear from what the EPA has said that any delay in the excavation is a public health hazard. And it's also clear from what I understand from the speaking very, very, getting all of these things very clearly detailed from the Housatonic Railroad Company, that the rail could do exactly what I'm telling you. So that there wouldn't be any delay in the long run. In fact, it would, even if we have to fight this out legally with the EPA, the total duration is going to be cut so much by the railroad that it's worth doing that. And nobody should be bullied by some sort of claim that fighting this is going to cause further delay than not fighting it, because that is absolutely incorrect.
Okay. No.
You just said legal delay by EPA. Why would they have a legal delay? Wouldn't they be interested in the most efficient, effective?
Of course they should be.
But the reason why they're not, you're saying is. well,
I'm
we
not
don't know.
saying the
We don't
reason
know.
why they're not.
So let me-
I'm not at all understanding of why they're doing it this way, except
Right.
what, John.
Let me
brought up
take a
point.
stab at helping you understand what legal delay means, at least in my mind. So for example, all these resources by G put together this UDF transportation and disposal plan. They submit it to EPA. The deadline's February 1st, by the way. And in that plan, this is why many of us are writing these letters. They missed an opportunity to spend additional resources looking at both truck and rail, then submit the plan. They omissed the entire rail concept in that plan. So now February 1st is going to come. I don't know what EPA is going to say once they receive all the public comments, but once you say they reject EPA's transportation disposal plan, which is a good thing, now we have another delay on resubmittal. So it's just going to continuously push this thing out more and more and more, because they should have, and any plan of this magnitude, everything should have been looked at. Traffic plans. When we're at peak Tanglewood population, what does Main Street look like on a normal day without Tanglewood? Now you're gonna have trucks everywhere. So like all the total missed opportunity looking at the efficacy of rail. So there's there's going to be this back and forth jockeying now, which just say EPA rejects the GE's initial plan, which is a good thing for us. But now we got another extension, then another extension. We just keep kicking the can down the road because they should have been focused on not only the trail truck efficacy and cost, but the rail as well.
Right.
It was completely one-sided.
Well, I think, Charlie pointed out in a meeting a while ago when Tagliaferro was there, that this had been mentioned a long time ago and then forgotten, somehow never mentioned again from years ago. And how come? Now, maybe the EPA got something from GE and said, okay, we're going to look at their proposal. And they approved their proposal without taking on the responsibility, saying, what are the alternatives to this proposal? That's where the public voices come in. I'm okay with the letter. My question is, given your discussions with the rail, would this letter have even greater impact if it came accompanied by a letter from the individual you spoke to saying that the railroad is ready?
They already have, Elias.
They had that letter?
Housatonic Railroad has already submitted public comments on this.
Okay, because I know to attach that to a letter, simply say, attach a letter that confirms the timeline being proposed, that this time it could be improved upon by a significant number of years with a comment in writing by the railroad, because, this said, well, we'll go back to the railroad. But if you're saying that letter's already written to them saying, we are saying that we can do this in this prescribed time, within a year, have all the sites done and move. If that letter is already on record, I don't want it attached to this.
Elias, let me just say this to you. It sort of begs the question in some way. The point that the letter, that the Lennox letter, and also my additional paragraph state, are to implore the EPA to actually look at that question and see if it's true. Now, if an independent, non-GE study comparing railroad use and truck use shows that trucks are better for the public safety, then I'll go for it. We're not insisting in this letter that rail is better. We're not insisting that. We're asking EPA to stop preventing that question from being clearly answered. EPA has not studied the use of rail. It should have. EPA has not said anything about GE's failure to study this. And the ideas that rail is very likely to do the things that I'm telling you about. Now, without a full study, nobody knows for sure, but EPA should know that rail has such a huge possibility of being so far superior than truck, that it's absolutely, it's borderline incompetent for EPA not to have an independent study of rail after what GE has presented, because it was such a misrepresentation. And Parker Rodriguez of the Housatonic Railroad stated that GE's presentation was intellectually dishonest. I think he was being very nice to GE.
And that's in writing. I'm just saying that.
Sort of, yes. But without belaboring, I don't speak on behalf of Housatonic Railroad, but, in our meeting with Parker Rodriguez and Senator Mark is like, Housatonic Railroad is not, it's a blue collar, small company.
Yeah, right.
They don't have the resources to dive deep into a study. That should be required by GE to
That
do
should
that.
have.
That should have been done by.
Housatonic Railroad's waving the hand saying, hey, we're here. We can make this work and make this happen. I don't think they submitted like an in-depth study that's saying, hey, we have infrastructure. In fact, other than the Glendale reach, they already have rail infrastructure in place.
Right, that's what I heard.
And so that should be GE's responsibility and costs or whatever. It's a fascinating.
It should have been. It should have been. But
it should be.
GE so incompetently presented that.
So without beating this thing down to a
That
dead horse.
my thing says we need a fair appraisal that's not done by GE. And that's basically it.
And so Lennox Board of Health has submitted and voted on a letter. This letter's in front of you, and I do like Charlie's addition. You know,
love
if the
it.
board,
Sign it.
assuming the board approves this. And also, just so we're all on the same page, Lee is going to meet separately to work on their letter. And it's on the Tri-Town agenda. We may come up with another draft for the Tri-Town. While it all sounds redundant, the more voices, more representation to submit the public comments, the better.
Is there one copy that we should also?
I have an original, so you guys make the vote, I'll pass this along.
I move that we accept the letter that Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, John. And we have a roll call vote on the motion.
John Eudice, I agree.
Elias Lefferman.
If you take a moment, just sign by your respective name.
I got mine.
Oh, you don't like my baby blue pen?
Blue or black? Blue or black?
It says, "Oh, baby" on it.
Blue or black? I've got blue here in my hand.
Is there preference
black?
for a legal document?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Glad you left me a little room for signing.
Good.
All right, moving on to the next agenda.
Okay, so I think we're ready for citizen speak time, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, Jim, do you want to make any kind of limitation or anything like that? Do we have a big number of people?
I think we only have one person on, James, Great Barrington citizen. We are in a citizen speak time. We just ask that keep your comments to 3 minutes or less and identify your name and address for the record if you want to speak.
Thank you.
You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, good afternoon. This is James Garzone, 84 North Plain Road in Great Barrington. Just no comments. Just want to say thank you very much for what you've been discussing. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Anybody else?
Anybody else on Zoom? I don't see anyone else on Zoom.
Okay,
All
all
right.
right. So unless there's something else, we don't have anything else on the agenda here. I see this blank spot there, Jim, 6. Is that?
Adjourn?
No, it's right before adjourn. It's an interesting kind of a spot.
Oh, you have a different one.
Yeah, we have a blank. Okay, well, I move
All right.
that we adjourn.
Okay. Elias, do you want to second the motion?
Let me think.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys. Okay, have a nice day. We're adjourned.
Good to hear.